What's up, gang? Kawaii50 here with another Fake Grand Order video, and today we are going to talk about the servant Jeff Goldblum is most likely to summon. That servant, of course, being Kijyo Koyo. Now, this is normally where I would insert the Jurassic Park theme, but I would get copyright struck into oblivion, so we're unfortunately going to have to skip that. What we won't skip, however, are the best allies, craft essences, and command codes to make this Tyrannosaurus Rex a crucial part of your lineup. Hopefully, this video helps you out if you ended up summoning Kijyo Koyo, and if it did, be sure to go ahead, like, and subscribe. Kijyo comes with a true Berserker's deck, 1 Quick, 1 Arts, and 3 Buster cards with a single target Buster Noble Phantasm. That's right, this is the OG Berserker lineup. For her max HP of 11,250, you might as well cut that in half, considering Berserkers are essentially made of paper. Her max attack, however, of 9,177 is overall respectable. You'll see a decent amount of NP gain from her, and when it comes to star absorption, well, she's basically going to get nothing, unless you take some crazy workarounds, one of which is actually in her kit, so that is very nice. Kijyo's first skill is Morph Dinosaur rank C. This gives her 3 turns of 20 to 30% defense, but more importantly, it increases her critical star gather rate by 3,000 to 5,000%. And this is the main reason you're going to be using this skill. When a Buster Brave Chain finally arrives, this is the time to lay the smackdown. Go ahead and max this skill second, mainly to reduce the cooldown on this skill. The defense boost, while a nice little extra thing to have, isn't as important as, say, if this skill came with an evade or an invincibility or something like that. Kijyo's still going to get hit pretty hard, even if this skill is active. It's just the nature of being a Berserker. Her second skill is Kuzuryu Lightning rank A. This gives her 3 turns of 20 to 30% quick and Buster card effectiveness, and also increases the overcharge level of the targeted ally once, and this lasts for 3 turns. Yes, she can definitely target herself with this skill, but if you want to use her as some sort of weird overcharge extra supporter, that is of course a valid option as well. Whatever the case is though, odds are you're going to be piling this all onto one servant with the best overcharge bonus effect. You are going to go ahead also and max this skill first, because this is her main source of damage when it comes to both her Noble Phantasm and her face cards. Her final skill is Rope of Life rank B. This restores everyone's HP by 1,000 to 2,000 and also removes them all from 1 debuff. So 1 debuff is going to get removed from your whole party, and it will be whatever the last one applied is. This also gives allies instant death immunity for 3 turns, which is it's a niche buff, but overall it can be helpful on certain challenge quests. We're still going to go ahead and max this skill last though. Is very situational. Odds are you're just going to use it for a heal if Kijyo happens to survive a Brave Chain. We're actually going to pick 2 append skills for Kijyo, the first being Follow-Up Technique Improvement. This increases her extra attack card effectiveness, and this is very helpful for Berserkers because they get a lot of extra damage out of those face cards, and that includes the extra attack. For the second skill, we are definitely going to go with Mana Loading, because that 10 to 20% starting NP gauge is good on every single character in the game. We can basically ignore the third append skill. It's not going to be super useful, especially when you're made of paper. Kijyo's Noble Phantasm is Momijigari. This deals 600 to 1,000% damage to a single enemy and also inflicts Kijyo with 3 turns of burn. This isn't nearly as big a demerit as it sounds. Seriously, don't worry about it. This also has an overcharge effect of increasing Kijyo's attack by 20 to 40% for 3 turns. And yes, this does activate before damage is dealt. Overall, this is a pretty dang solid single target Noble Phantasm. I would have preferred if there was some sort of NP damage on that overcharge. That is basically the overall best overcharge effect when it comes to any sort of damaging Noble Phantasm, but I'll take the attack boost. That is perfectly fine. When it comes to Kijyo's allies, first and foremost, we are going to pick the Buster supporters. Merlin is of course going to be your primary option. Not only is he going to be able to drastically increase her Buster card effectiveness, which is going to help her face cards and Noble Phantasm, but she's also able to provide a party-wide invincibility for Kijyo Koyo. With him providing that is going to be very, very helpful since she doesn't have any sort of avoidance tools of her own. But of course, Merlin isn't the only option in the game, and there are some other servants out there that can really help Kijyo, and let's go over a few of them right now. For the freebie option, I definitely want to recommend Leonidas. Leonidas, of course, being able to provide that solid Buster card effectiveness, but even more so than that, he has that target focus and that guts. See, your Berserkers, they're made of paper mache. They are not going to survive a prolonged attack against them. And having Leonidas there right out of the gate to take some of those hits, to tank them and survive, maybe even providing with a beneficial effect if he ends up dying, that's going to be very, very helpful for this gigantic dinosaur. Who would have thought the dinosaur would have been super duper weak to attacks? What can you do though? For our first 4-star option, I definitely want to recommend Thomas Edison. Now, this servant probably hasn't really occurred to you. I really don't see him getting a lot of widespread use, but as his kit has continued to be buffed over the years, he's actually become quite good, and on NA, he is only going to get better. His Wizard of Menlo Park skill will give Kijyo a defense boost that stacks with her own, and will also reduce all of her skill cooldowns by 1. His third skill, Concept Improvement, rank A+, gives her 2 additional levels of NP overcharge and also a slight critical star drop rate boost. We mainly want this for the overcharge so we can really double down on that attack boost. And Edison also has an upgrade coming in the future to his mass production skill. Rather than just increasing critical stars and granting NP gauge every single turn, this is also going to increase the Noble Phantasm strength of all allies by 10 to 20% for 5 whole turns. This is of course going to be very useful on arts type servants who are able to loop, but this is also helpful for Kijyo Koyo as well, granting her some critical NP strength bonuses, which she unfortunately lacks in her base kit. Of course, I can't mention Buster servants without mentioning the upcoming Queen Himiko. Himiko is able to provide an attack boost to all allies, as well as 8 critical stars each turn for all allies. You may find something similar in Ganesha's kit, also a truly excellent pick to pair with Kijyo for similar reasons to Leonidas. Himiko is also able to provide a Buster card effectiveness boost to all allies, as well as an increase to NP overcharge level and critical strength. All of this, of course, stacking with any buffs Kijyo is able to get on herself on top of that. Himiko is really going to be a very effective servant that's going to help out basically anybody in the Buster category. The T-Rex is no exception. And finally, of course, we have Nightingale. The Nurse of Steel is able to provide an HP recovery as well as some solid Buster card boosts to Kijyo Koyo. She also is able to provide debuff cleanse for the entire party and recover the entire party's HP. Nightingale may be falling off a little bit, but she still is able to provide some excellent utility that basically any Buster servant in your party will be happy to have. Now when it comes to our craft essences, Kijyo actually has a fairly powerful Noble Phantasm, especially if you've gotten multiple levels of it, and that sweet attack bonus makes it even better. So let's go ahead and try to pump it up with a bit of NP strength since that's lacking in her kit. Barring that, Buster card effectiveness is of course insanely helpful since her Noble Phantasm and 3 of her cards constitute that. You also can't go wrong with critical damage, since she's of course able to draw a bunch of critical stars to herself for a single turn. For our most budget option, I've definitely got to recommend the Storch Ritter. This increases the NP strength of specifically a Berserker class servant by 15 to 25%. Of course, Kijyo Koyo, being a Berserker class servant, is really going to love this. Holy Night Supper is my higher rarity freebie recommendation. This grants starting NP gauge, critical damage, as well as a Noble Phantasm damage boost. All things Kijyo and a lot of other servants would really love. Beyond this, we are really getting into the territory of Gacha CEs. My first recommendation is Starry Nights, granting Buster Card effectiveness, critical strength, and that starting NP gauge. And if you really want to go ham on the NP damage, of course you cannot go wrong with the Black Grail. Kijyo is able to recover a little bit of that HP, but really it's a detriment you don't even have to worry about, because odds are your unlucky opponent is likely to be dead after a single Noble Phantasm. And let's go and look over command codes. When it comes to Kijyo Koyo's command codes, let's first talk about utility. That burn buff might not be something that you really want to see after using that Noble Phantasm, but luckily there are quite a few ways to clear it. Barring servants, your best bet is going to be the White Vessel's command seal, which removes 1 debuff when attacking with the engraved card. This can be very helpful for kicking off that burn. I would also definitely like to recommend your Faithful Sheep. This removes 1 ailment debuff, and burn is considered an ailment debuff, so anything that says that, you know it is going to cleanse that burn. We also need to look at something like, say, rulers. You know rulers? You've seen rulers. Rulers are annoying, but berserkers are able to tear right through their defenses. So consider something like the Nun with a Bodhisattva's Merciful Gaze if you really decide you want to use Kijyo Koyo. That damage against ruler enemies is going to be very beneficial if you're taking her as your primary ruler slayer. Maybe you think foreigners are just a little too unfair. And when it comes to cards beyond that, remember, she has the ability to crit. So critical damage command codes are going to be essential. Command Seal of a Cardinal-Minded Retainer fits perfectly on one of her Buster cards. And if you want to go even further beyond, then Mistress of the Heavens is an excellent pick for that Buster card as well. Overall, gang, Kijyo Koyo is a very solid single-target berserker that definitely gets the job done. The only problem is that she is outshined in her rarity by some incredibly powerful servants. Of course, the one that is immediately on your mind is Heracles. Is she necessarily going to beat Heracles as your backline servant? Definitely not. The man is just that impressive. But just because she has really powerful competition in her rarity, that does not mean that she is bad by any means. She is a strong berserker. She does have the ability to deal some very impressive Noble Phantasm damage. She does have the ability to buff up her own Buster cards with one of her skills, and has overcharge support, which is something that is still fairly new in the game right now, something that hasn't been explored that much, but it can really make a difference on quite a few servants. The main things holding her back, though, are her survivability tools. Defense Up is tied to her Critical Star Gather, and you're mainly going to be using this for Critical Star Gather because the Defense Up just isn't nearly that worth it because of her class. And her heal, well, it's nice as a party-wide debuff cleanse, but most of the time it might as well not even be there. Most players would prefer a Guts, an Evade, or an Invincibility to make sure she's able to mitigate an unlucky turn of damage. But keeping those things in mind, if you go ahead and work around that with a solid slew of supports, Kijyo Koyo can be a very effective berserker on your team that can even help you in challenge quest content. But of course, I want to know what you all think, so let me know your thoughts on Kijyo Koyo down in the comment section below. Let me know if you think there are any allies, craft essences, or command codes that I might have missed. And if you want to talk more Fate Grand Order, well, there is a place to do it, and that would be my Discord server. Everyone there has been insanely helpful and has been celebrating their board game Apocalypse rolls. So if you want to go ahead and celebrate with them, go ahead and stop on by in the link below. I would also like to thank all my patrons on Patreon, subscribers and followers on Twitch, and of course all of you here on YouTube for giving me the continued support that makes me want to keep making these videos. I really appreciate it. But anyways, gang, that's it for me, Kawaii50. I hope you all have a phenomenal day, and I'll see you all in the next video.